And folks, and Dr. Rima and Vinny, we are now recording the Dr. Rima Truth Reports of September 11, 2014.
Oh, okay. Well, I was just coming off the back of a 9/11 protest that I did just yesterday, because we're a day ahead of you in New Zealand. We get to see the days first. So it's actually September 12th where I am, and I spent yesterday outside the Television New Zealand studios asking why in 13 years they haven't covered Building 7.
Well, because that would be embarrassing, wouldn't it?
Yeah. And I'm sorry, I'm just reeling from this Facebook conversation I was just having with this guy in the green who's voting Greens, who are full on Agenda 21 supporters. Like, I was making the argument that Agenda 21 sounds real nice and fluffy, but how they're implementing it, on the other hand, is completely different. Hitler, for example.
It's designed to sound nice and fluffy. If they told people what they were actually doing, of course, that would not go down so well. I tell you what, we have to kill off 90% of you. We have to make you part of the toxic topsoil. We have to.
This was asking how. Where do they say that, though? Like, in what section and in what language? Because what we're talking about here is the difference between what somebody's actually going to put down in a document and then what the implications of what are put down in the document actually mean. Like for instance, in the Patriot Act, the definition of force is inclusive of the use of writing and speaking. So that means if you use force, you're a terrorist. So it means if you write or speak something that the government claims as terrorist, you don't have any First Amendment rights anymore.
Another good example of that is the famous conference that was held in Germany at the start of World War II, which led to the Holocaust. There was a memo produced from that conference which authorized Eichmann to set up the process, and that memo never once actually says what they're really going to do. So yes, bureaucrats are really good at covering their behinds, although history sometimes catches up to them. You know.
Yes, and this conversation I was having on Facebook is with, as I said, a Green Agenda 21 sort of guy, and I brought up the instance of Hitler promising all these things like public housing, good roads, and industry, and a stable economy, and all of that kind of stuff. But he was very vague on how he planned to implement all of that. And this guy asked me, so what exactly did Hitler do that, to the Germans that was bad?
Oh.
You just made that up.
I said to him,
just made that up.
No, I'm reading it off of the thing right now. I can send you the screenshot if you don't believe it. And I said to him, oh, nothing. Just force people to register their firearms and ban certain people from purchasing them, force them to show ID everywhere they went, made them fill out census forms disclosing what religion and race they were, made certain people wear identifying marks on their clothing, burned their own parliament down and blamed it on a mentally defective, and started the Department of Homeland Security that took the last of everyone's freedom off them in exchange for security, then started exterminating gypsies, Jews, cripples, blacks, and other undesirables. I mean, there's nothing to worry about. It'll never happen again. And if it does, I'm sure our new tyrants will tell us what they're about to do before they do it and give us all a choice to opt out.
Very good.
I mean, am I the only one in this country? Oh my God. Am I the only person in this country who actually sees the real implications of what my country's political parties actually have planned to do? Am I the only one? No, I know that I'm not. And that's the even more frustrating thing. I recall somebody who's voting for Ron Paul in the States one time say that they were asked in a conference hall, who's voting for Ron Paul? And this one guy put his hand up, and after he did that, nearly the whole hall put their hand up. And the thing is, none of them knew that anybody else wanted to vote for Ron Paul. They all thought they were alone, but they're surrounded by all these people who were wanting to do it. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like that.
And of course, it's the propaganda machine that tries to convince people that the opposite is true, that they're alone, they have no power, they can do nothing to change the situation. And that's why the Ebola crisis is so valuable. It trains people to be despondent, to wait for death.
it does indeed. And if they're despondent or hopeful or looking in the wrong direction, that is to say, not using nano silver, it trains them to be dead.
Indeed.
This is true, and I think what's happening here, like it's election season right now in New Zealand, and so many people are saying, "Oh, I don't want to vote. I don't want to vote or anything. It's all rigged." And then they're also supplying evidence of how the politicians influence votes and everything at the same breath as saying that the votes don't matter. Hold on a second. Why would the politicians have to use dirty tactics to influence your votes if your votes didn't matter?
Right.
All right.
Well,
Here's the thing.
There is one piece of reality there. Unless they're going to totally rig the elections and just count anything they've agreed to previously, then getting the votes into the machine. Do you use machines there, or do you still use paper?
Paper.
Ah.
Getting the votes into the ballot boxes does matter. And since it's probably going to be hotly contested because of egos, who gets to be the dupe in chief in a particular office position, then somebody is going to be contesting and saying, no, I got that vote. That was for me, so I could get bought. So there's going to be that. So it matters in the ballot box. Now, the question is, once it's in the ballot box and once the dupe in chief has been installed, his hand has been held up and he says, "So help me God," or whatever it is that they say in New Zealand and Chile and the rest of the world. The question is, what are we going to do about it? We can surrender the inconvenient fiction that what we do matters and let them do whatever they want to us and against us. Or we can choose to perceive that the inconvenient fiction that what we do matters is so important that we behave in such a way to make it matter. And then we have real power.
Well, a
lot of people go like, there's no point in voting and everything's corrupt or the whole system's screwed, wake up. But they stop there, as if waking up is the pinnacle, as if that accomplishes something. I don't just encourage people to wake up. I also encourage them to get out of bed. Clean yourself up. Eat something substantial. Maybe drink something stimulating and hydrating. And then get to work, son. That scumbaggery isn't going to expose itself, is it?
What do people say in general when you say that to them?
I don't know. Maybe they cackle a little bit. And that's about it.
So, Vincent, how long have you been on the air with your show and defending the ideas you're defending?
I don't know, 7 years or so.
7 years. Very interesting.
In total, I mean, that's including from my starting days doing YouTube through to my things, and just moving on to here. Just in general, you just sit back and you do a whole lot of work every single day. And I figured out, I had a really important realization yesterday, is that everybody wants to have gainful employment that has no possibility of redundancy, right? And redundancy means running out of work. And so I figured out that exposing scumbaggery is a job that will never be finished, and I could never, cease to be useful in. And so hence I have secured a career path for which the work could never dry up. Many people struggle for generations to find these things that I found
out. Very interesting. But I also understand that you're being censored. Dr. Rima mentioned to me. And we'd love to know how the system is treating you. As you may be aware, Dr. Rima was personally attacked in the New York Times a few weeks ago. And, of course, there's been a lot of efforts to attack our website. We find that links that we have going to special pages don't work for a while, and especially if the link uses the word nano silver, very interestingly. But what happened to you? Tell us.
Well, you guys know me for a while, so you know that I'm not a very good person at preparation or doing things terribly seriously. This time I did. I was going to do a video about our Prime Minister John Key's past. And for the first time in my activist career, I got myself a bunch of people who were researchers, and I got them to shell me out bullet points, a lot of them, about his past, his banking industry machinations, and that kind of thing. And I managed to weave this together with my wordsmithery into a script that was so damning, so powerful, so compelling that they had to delete my entire YouTube channel that had nearly 3,000 videos and 3.5 million hits and 16,000 subscribers without warning.
Wow.
Instantly.
Is it
no
still
appeals, no nothing, deleted permanently.
Is there any contact that you've made with them?
No, I mean, you get the one chance and the one chance only to say one thing in your Google recovery account options.
Yeah.
And then their only response is an automatic response first off that says, if we decide to do anything different to what we've done, i.e. delete your entire decades worth of work, we'll contact you. And they haven't contacted me.
And
Not
they
yet.
and it's still off. It's still off the air.
Yeah, and the reasons they gave for deleting the entire channel were actually just complaints about one video, and they weren't even specific complaints. They said it might be spam, it might be abusive, it might be a money-making scheme, or something like that, right?
And of course, you have no idea who accused you.
I have no idea who accused me, or why they accused me, or what justification there is for deleting nearly 3,000 videos. New Zealand's largest online archive of public meetings and protests in history that I myself have spent the last 7 years, many occasions, staying up long, long nights to make sure that all of these speeches and all of these public meetings and things of that nature were available online for public scrutiny to the people who couldn't make it there on the nights. You know, I just do this as a...
Do you have backup?
Well, they're uploading as we speak. There's currently 217 videos uploading to my my backup YouTube account, and that's the third lot that I'm going through. So I've got a whole bunch of big fat hard drives. So it takes about, I'm not sure if it might take me till the end of the month to get everything.
May I suggest you also duplicate it on one of their competitors? You know.
Well, here's the problem. YouTube has bandwidth, a lot of it, and that allows me to upload things very, very quickly. What will take me till the end of the month to upload to my YouTube channel would probably take me till the end of next year to upload to anywhere else. Wow. I mean, I looked at Vimeo. Their free option, for example, is 5 gigabytes. I upload that within 3-4 hours. You know, in a couple of days. Mm-hmm. Every 3 or 4 hours, I'll upload my monthly allowable limit to Vimeo, and it's kind of like if you look around you, think to yourself, how many products can you see, or that you're wearing, or something of that nature, were either A, made with oil specifically, or B, made with oil-powered and or used or fashioned machines? And the answer is damn near everything. So when people talk about an alternative to YouTube, it's kind of like looking around you and then trying to find alternatives for oil for absolutely everything. It just doesn't exist. It's not like a ready available thing, is it?
No, it's not.
Because YouTube and Google and Facebook have dominated. Okay, and this is the world we live in. It's a YouTube, Google, Facebook world. They have their fingers into everything. And no competitor is of any. It's like trying to get a Star Cruiser up to firing strength so you can attack your enemies. We're way, way away from being at full firing strength yet, methinks.
I got it. Very interesting.
And now let's talk about your other options for getting out this unacceptable information. What can you do?
Well, have you ever? I don't know if you're ever a teenager and sometimes you see this really bad pimple and you kind of like, you squeeze it, but you squeeze it too hard and you actually make it look a hell of a lot worse. Similar thing happens when you try to censor something. All of a sudden, there's this banned video that everybody can't help but want to watch.
Oh, good, good.
Okay, so in the first 6 days, and this has never happened to me, by the way. In the first 6 days, there was 6,000 views. There was 1,000 hits a day accumulating onto that, and that's the fastest amount of hits I've ever gotten on anything I've ever done. And I should think so, because this is the first script that I've ever really worked on in terms of fully exposing scumbaggery. You know, in general, I just let the activists expose the scumbaggery and I just give them a platform and everything. But this time I decided to take all their words and then wordsmith them into something better. So it was starting to go viral, really, and I could see it going mega viral. But we only got up to 6 days before, biblically, on the 7th day, my YouTube channel got put to rest. So I jumped into action. I uploaded the video to a blog post on my website so that people could at least go to that blog and then do it. And then within the first day, that blog had 1,000 likes, Facebook likes on it. And just because it's got a like doesn't mean that that's only one view. There could be 20 people that have visited before even clicking like.
Right, right.
So, and currently it's up to like 4,000 likes. And the most I've ever gotten in terms of likes on a particular post or any show on my website is like, I don't know, a couple of hundred. You know?
So tell us, what is this video? Why was it going viral?
Okay, well, the thing is, it's so much easier if we just play it for you. I mean, I could read it out. I could read it out for you if you want.
Please do it. Do it.
We'd love it.
Okay. Well, if you just give me a second here to crack open the John Key Totally Exposed script. Ladies and gentlemen, John Key, leader of the National Party, Prime Minister of New Zealand since 2008. Everyone voted for him without knowing his track record, who he worked for, where his career originated, and how he does business today. And by the end of the short video, you will know enough to be able to make an informed decision when voting him in or not again. Little Johnny was born in a state house, the son of an alcoholic absentee father and guilt-provoking mother who pins all her hopes on her son, living vicariously through him, especially because she never had another boy and never remarried. She then allegedly inherited a large sum and allegedly spent much of it on her son. John worked for 10 years as a New Zealand investment banker since the mid-1980s, and when the stock market crashed, he made a killing selling New Zealand dollars. He headed offshore in 1995, working for Merrill Lynch, the bank that was first exposed as the world's first derivatives traders and went bust during the 2008 financial crisis due to its heavy investment in the derivatives market, swallowed up by the Bank of America, which it turns out John Key still has shares in. A conflict of interest, considering anyone could Google the bank name and fines to see it's been fined many times for drug dealing, gun running, money laundering, and is famous for getting countries into debt. Is John Key personally profiting from New Zealand's growing indebtedness? The Bank of America also has a stake in the military-industrial complex, who've profited tremendously after several successive no-end-in-sight illegal US wars, and this gives you an idea of the kind of circles John revolves in. John's worked for Merrill Lynch in Singapore, London, Sydney, and Ireland, and when the Irish economy was kicking off, it was allowing sweetheart tax breaks to big banks and financial institutions if they moved their back offices to Ireland. So John did, assisting 15,000 of his clients to avoid tax. The Irish economy was hollowed out with debt, collapsing shortly after John skipped the country and put all his money into blind trusts. John Key knows what's in his blind trusts. He's a bit of a drinker and let it slip while a bit pissed that he owns a vineyard. Turns out that vineyard is in his blind trust, although he claims he doesn't know what's in it. This is because he has 2 trusts, one blind and one not so blind, that mirrors the other one. He was in charge of business units like global foreign exchange and European bond and derivative trading. What is derivative trading? Basically, it's so complicated that the Auditor General once said something like, "It's such a technical area that I can't understand it, so I got KPMG to investigate themselves for me, and they assure me it's all good, bro." Do you recall the Great Depression? Of course not. In the 1920s, you could buy $10 of shares for only $1 down, allowing people to gamble on the stock market at incredible volumes. Massive amounts of fake money and debt was generated, and the economy got sucked into it like a black hole. To prevent that happening again, a law was crafted called the Glass-Steagall Act, which was repealed in 1999, leaving the US derivatives market completely unregulated. The New York State Gaming Commission tried to regulate it because they saw derivatives as gambling, but they were unsuccessful, obviously. In 1999, John was legally allowed to sell derivatives in America due to the repeal of Glass-Steagall and was invited to represent Merrill Lynch and joined the Foreign Exchange Committee of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, a private banking cartel that has a monopoly on the supply of money and loan it to the US government at interest and more or less control the US government through debt. Ownership of the 13 banks with shares in the Fed can be traced back to the world's most ultra-intergenerational wealth families, hidden away from public view via an elaborate network of family trusts. John worked there for 2 years and twice undertook management studies at Harvard University in Boston. He became known as the Smiling Assassin by colleagues after personally terminating over 100 employees in one day with a big beaming smile, no guilt, no remorse, no conscience, a corporate psychopath. Known to be charming and enchanting when you first meet them, but are ultimately shallow and have few meaningful, lasting relationships. They crave money and power and are willing to sabotage, intimidate, manipulate, steal, defame, lie, and cheat, shamelessly, without guilt. Desiring both attention and idolization, they have pathological narcissism and despise being criticized. They are also often sexually promiscuous. Private prosecutor Graham McCready is including a DVD of The Wolf of Wall Street in his evidence against John Key, evidence of the lifestyle and mentality Key and co-workers likely enjoyed on Wall Street. Normally on Wall Street, your earnings get paid 40% Normally on Wall Street, your earnings get paid 40% cash, 40% stock, 20% options. Key demanded to be paid 100% in stock and options. That's where his incentive to crime is. Can you imagine the opportunities for insider trading when you literally run the country? He tried to flush out commercially sensitive information from the Ombudsman when Transrail New Zealand was being valued while at the same time owning shares in it. John Key cannot help himself. When Key left Wall Street after 6 or 7 years in foreign exchange, he was in the tip-top of the elite with roughly $50 million on salary and bonuses. Key refers to his $5 million mansion as the house that Merrill built. They had a beach house in Omaha and now have a $3.2 million Hawaiian holiday home. Only 202,000 people have incomes above $30 million. Roughly 2,000 of those are billionaires. John says, we're not ridiculously wealthy. There are lots of people not seen on the NBR rich list that have a lot of money. Not counting his blind trusts, he could be worth hundreds of millions. Is he a Wall Street banker or New Zealand Prime Minister? Jumping forward to the 2008 financial crisis, Money magazine said derivatives were one of the chief causes of the 2008 credit crunch, a collapse that happened in the same year we elected John Key to handle the debt crisis he helped cause, as he admitted on breakfast television. And what did he do once elected in order to save us from the debt crisis? He borrowed more money than all previous prime ministers combined. We've gone from $8 billion to over $80 billion so far, with another $112 billion worth of derivative debts in off-the-book accounting that haven't been reported on since 2011, so they must be growing. Key knew about his unauthorized biography long before it was released, and guess what? It doesn't even mention the word derivatives once. A man of the people, you say? He's supposed to be the Member of Parliament for Helensville and lives across town in a $5 million Parnell mansion he calls the house that Merrill built. Only had one public meeting in his electorate the whole election, on the proviso that no one can talk about or criticise him, any other party, or their policy, or their candidates. And guess who was the only person that violated these conditions, which John Key himself set up for everybody else? John Key. So, let me see if I have this straight. He's a psychopathic, narcissistic, passive-aggressive mama's boy with daddy issues, and he has control of a country that has no corruption prevention framework. He may have been sent here to destroy this country, but it is not destroyed yet, and we can change our future if we choose to. If we sink Team Key, it will deal a crippling blow to the financial elite's agenda. This is Vinny Eastwood. Vote wisely, New Zealand.
Now, when is the election?
In about 2 weeks.
Wow, that is
So they deleted my
powerful.
channel.
Of course.
They deleted my channel nearly 2 weeks after the election.
So, do you have strong feelings opposing him?
Well, I wouldn't say I hate the guy. I'd just say that I spend about 6 hours a day in deep, intense meditation, trying to reach out psychically to banana peels, slippery staircases, loose skateboards, and children's toy cars, anything that might help him on his journey to a broken spine.
I think in the United States that would be considered hate speech, and I think you would possibly find yourself in very bad trouble. I'm glad that it's not in New Zealand.
In fact, they would probably raid your home, shoot your dog, and then just tear apart everything for fun.
And throw a flashbang grenade into your bedroom where your wife was sleeping.
Right. So, be glad you're not living in the U.S. of A.
Oh, I thank myself constantly for not moving there. And I thank my drug conviction for it as well.
All right.
Vinny,
Is
there any real opposition in New Zealand to the New World Order? Or is it completely New World Order controlled?
I don't know. I guess in terms of people in New Zealand that are against the New World Order, there's me, and it's looking pretty bleak out there.
All right.
I'm just joking.
Who would you vote for, Vinny? Seriously.
At the moment, I'm probably going to be voting for Winston Peters from the New Zealand First Party. I've actually been filming his speeches for quite a while. I don't know if you can relate to this. You ever heard a politician that kind of is always getting in trouble, getting kicked out of the house for abusing the current government or something, and exposing their scumbaggery, who maybe conducted sort of like little investigations themselves and caused huge controversy when a huge bunch of scammers and psychopathic scum were trying to take over the government, and mentions the Rothschild. Yeah, nobody even mentions the Rothschilds in their speeches, or makes campaign promises to their people in their local electorates, like building a bridge without increasing their taxes, and then actually getting it done, and then getting voted out of your seat, and then not even being invited to the bridge launch. You ever seen somebody be demonized in the media for a full 6 months, and after a 6-month investigation at the height of an election season, they find absolutely nothing? And the party gets voted out of parliament anyway because everybody still thinks he did nothing, and they didn't repeat it over 1,000 times that he did nothing wrong. You ever heard a politician like that? That's Winston Peters of New Zealand First.
Does the party have any seats in parliament right now?
He's in parliament. He's got eight MPs, I think.
Okay.
And I interviewed one of his lead MPs, number 3 on the list, Andrew Williams, who's the former mayor of Auckland City. You know how under Agenda 21 they want to have those big amalgamations of larger cityscape areas and turn them into sort of more centralised hierarchical structures. Well, they did that to the Auckland region. There's 1.4 million people here, 9 different cities, and they merged them all into one, and basically everybody's democratic rights and representation just, boom, evaporated. Everybody's rates and everything like that, boom, exploded out of control. Even though the government promised them that the council would not raise everybody's rates above the rate of inflation. And guess what? They didn't tell them that they gave the council the power to make up what the rate of inflation is.
I love it. That is so special. That is so
So wait a minute. So it's in their interest to overstate the rate of inflation, just like it's in the interest of the U.S. government to dramatically understate the level of inflation. Is that true?
Yeah, and it's also in their interest to borrow money. If you come to the end of your council year and you've spent, say, $1.8 billion on roading projects or something like that, and your budget was, say, $1.6 billion, then the next year your allotted allowance for local government and how much you can take off people becomes 1.8 billion instead of staying at 1.6. Had you done it efficiently and you did it all for 1 billion instead of 1.6, then the next year's budget you would have been given 1 billion instead of 1.6. You see how that works? If you save money,
Yes.
you get given less money. If you waste money and you get your country into debt, you get given more money. You see how that works?
See how it works? Exactly. This is very similar to the way the radiation readings are being done in the U.S., where they're doing them, where they're running a 3-month average. So 3 months of high readings now become normal. And then 3
Yeah.
months more of high readings now become normal. And it's always normal. But the readings
Yeah.
are higher and higher and higher. And soon, of course, it reaches the level where, the whole thing collapses. I mean, do they really think they can continue with an endless increase in?
Well, I don't know. I think the appropriate question is, do you really think they're sane?
Well, we have a psychiatrist with us, and here it is, the last 15 minutes of our first hour. Maybe we should ask the psychiatrist to tell us if do you think that that Vinny Eastwood's psychoanalysis of the Prime Minister of New Zealand was potentially correct? I mean, he was analyzing the guy's makeup and his phobias and all the rest of it. What do you think, Dr. Rima?
I had some question about it. As you did your summation, I thought when you said that he was still a mama's boy, I didn't see any evidence presented for that. He may have once been a mama's boy, but sometimes people move past that and they become wife's boys or lover's boys or whatever. So I would ask for additional data to show that he is still a mama's boy. However, when it comes to running a country into the ground, I actually don't care a rat's ass whether someone is a mama's boy or a macho man or a RoboCop. I don't care. However, the rest of everything I heard was cogent and meaningful and convincing and terrifying. So I thought it was an absolutely brilliant analysis that made sense psychologically and made at least transparency out of something that makes no sense, which is the fiscal depredation, the prey mentality upon one's own people and country. That makes no sense. But that's what a psychopath is.
Would you like to be given an exclusive and actually have it open up deeper? Because the script that I did actually has a bunch of other sections, a final section that was cut from the final script. Would you like me to read that?
Yes.
Yes, folks.
Yes.
Here we go. This is stuff that is so extreme that even Vinny Eastwood wouldn't put it in, and even if it had, and still he lost his YouTube channel. Self-censorship. Why bother?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, why bother self-censoring? Go for it, Vinny.
All right.
Okay. John's done many. Excuse me. Let me take a slurp of something. Actually, give me that.
Please go ahead and slurp. Go ahead and slurp. I think, Dr. Rima, one thing that the evidence so far shows is that the current Prime Minister of New Zealand is the New World Order's Gauleiter, if I may use that term, in New Zealand.
You know how guilt by association's a logical fallacy? When it comes to criminal banking cartels, I don't think the fallacy's that illogical. You know.
We'll be back in 5 minutes for the second hour of the Dr. Rima Reports. Truth Reports. Don't go away.
Are we really? No, I don't think so, Dr. Rima. It's 10:48. I didn't hear any music.
We will be back, but not stopping.
Well, actually, we'll be back right now, ladies and gentlemen, with Vinny Eastwood reading out the remainder of the uncensored part of the John Key script, and this is
the editor's cut,
tying it to New Zealand defence.
Go
all right. John's done many terrible things and told so many lies that we could never cover them all because there are new ones every day. But here's a few right honourable mentions. Goods and services tax what used to be 13.5%. He said he wouldn't raise it, and then he raised it. The Government Communications and Security Bureau, the GCSB. He said he wouldn't break the law and spy on Kiwis. He then spied on Kiwis illegally. Then he changed the law retroactively to make breaking the law legal and continues to spy on Kiwis to this day. The TPPA, the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, a secret trade treaty that both National and Labour are pushing. It will seize control of the economy and to a large extent the government's ability to write its own laws if they impede the will of international corporations who are writing the secret treaty. If we impede on their profits, we're taken to the World Court which the corporations control and have to pay fines in a case which the banks and corporations cannot lose. We already provide 3 Queen's Counsel lawyers for the World Bank-controlled World Court to go out and take money from poor countries that can't pay off their debt to the bankers already. The Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement is of better use as TP when you need to PP at a PPTA meeting. New Zealand Defence under John Key. Operation Catapult, a training exercise to depose an anti-US leader. The largest amount of foreign troops in New Zealand since World War II, using protesters holding placards with anti-American slogans as mock terrorists. Will the US protect its financial interests in New Zealand by force if necessary? NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. John signed a partnership agreement with NATO, the world's pseudo-private banking army cartel. And the US Coast Guard. John Key wants them to return to New Zealand and have jurisdiction in our waters. Some harbours are being dredged to make them deeper, allegedly to allow for larger vessels. We're already able to accommodate the world's largest cruise liners. What's larger than the world's largest cruise liner? Aircraft carriers. It's also now been made illegal for New Zealand police to pull over foreign military vehicles on our roads. We are also a strategic nuclear submarine outlet. Submarines can fire missiles in the northern Pacific and then escape into underwater trenches and travel undetected all the way to New Zealand. Recently, a massive remodel of Ohankia Air Base, of a few fences and other high-tech upgrades costing millions. This is all allegedly because we're getting just 10 new helicopters. Agenda 21, the agenda for the 21st century. The environmental policy of Greens, Labour, Internet Mana and National is all Agenda 21, but they call it sustainability, smart growth, smart meters and sustainable development. Signed by Prime Minister Jim Bolger in 1992 aboard Prince Charles' private yacht, this UN document is the global template for how to locally set up a total surveillance and control grid for all human activity for administrative convenience at a global level. Plans include microchipping livestock, classify most of the nation's landmass as protected areas that are off limits to human activity, establish super cities connected by mega highways for human resettlement, and predominantly cramped apartment blocks along railroad tracks. You can search and verify any of these facts for yourself. The research for this video was provided by Evelyn Gilbert from Aotearoa Wider Perspective, Ben Vidgen, author of State Secrets, Penny Bright, Anti-Corruption Watchdog, and Ian Parker from Public Credit or Bust.
That's an astounding array of misfunction and misbehavior, and I don't see anything that says he's a mama's boy because of it.
Yeah, well, you know what they say, if you've got a pill and 99% of it's good for you and 1% bad, I think the 99% kind of overrides it.
I never heard them say that, but that's okay.
That's because I just made it up. You know, like how 99% of statistics are made up.
Correct. I think it's a brilliant analysis.
But you know what I could do? I could simply edit out the part about his father and mother completely from the script, and then everybody would just go, "Wow!" and I'd never have to deal with this because it's a common reference that people bring up. And in fact, in some cases, the only thing people bring up about the video is about how I mentioned his mother and his father and his relationship with us. If I simply delete that, censor that tiny little bit, it'll eliminate all of that in perpetuity.
Well, I think it's relevant that he had an alcoholic father. I think that it's relevant that his father was in government. I think that's quite fair. But I think I was only being half serious. There's no the fact that he did not have an overly attached relationship with his mother is irrelevant. We know at this point. So that doesn't add anything. The fact dysfunctional father and drinking issue and so on. Yeah, that's an issue. I think that it's brilliant and compelling because it's a kind of step-by-step strategy, and it's based in data that is verifiable. It's wonderful. I just wish that you have the time and the availability to do lots and lots and lots of those and get kicked off lots of public channels, because that would get your work out very far. I mean, for instance, Obama, for instance, Dick Cheney, for instance.
Just remember, the research that was given to me by people who actually do research for a living. I'm mostly like I'm probably closer to being an entertainer comedian like Jon Stewart than I am to being a serious researcher, investigative journalist like others with credibility. So my talent lies in taking facts that people have given me and wording them and weaving them basically via wordsmithery into something that I can actually get across in a very short period of time with so much fewer words. Like, for example,
there we go.
Yeah.
A true break is coming up.
Well, there you go.
Back in a little bit.
You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Welcome back to the second hour of the Dr. Rima Truth Reports. I'm Rima MD. I am the medical director of the Natural Solutions Foundation. Our principal website is Dr. Rima, R-I-M-A, truthreports.com. We tell the truth, and so does our guest, Vinny Eastwood. But before we go back to Vinny's outstanding and both entertaining and simultaneously horrifying way of telling the truth about the truth that needs to be told, in this case, the Prime Minister of New Zealand, where Vinny lives, or at least lives for now. Before we do that, I would like
I'm currently alive. That's good to know.
It's good to know, yes. This is live radio.
I live for now.
It's live radio as opposed to dead radio. It's so much better. Like dancing to live music. Consider the options. Anyway, what I was going to say is that we have several things that you should have. First of all, we have a lot of truth, and we're sharing it with you transoceanically from New Jersey, from Santiago de Chile, and from what city do you live in, Vinny, in New Zealand?
Sorry, when you say what city I live in, Auckland.
What city? Auckland. You do live in Auckland. Okay, and so it's Santiago, New Jersey, and Auckland. How interesting. What I was going to say is not only do you need nano silver, because Ebola is coming to where you live, whether you live in the United States or New Zealand or Finland or wherever you're living, Ebola will be precipitated into your world if it serves the globalist agenda. And the only way it will not serve the globalist agenda is if we tell them clearly that, A, we're on to them, we get what they're doing. We understand that they are using their dream plague to depopulate and to shatter the social system so that they can be reorganized into serfdom. We understand that. If you furthermore have protected yourself so that you don't come down with Ebola and the people around you, the people that you care about, are also protected. And as far as we know, there is exactly one effective protection, and that just happens to be nanosilver 10 parts per million, the identical solution that we selected months before the Ebola outbreak as the best nanosilver in the world. And it's available at NSF. Those are the initials of Natural Solutions Foundation, nsfmarketplace.com. While you're there, you'll see a place where you can enter your email, whether or not you purchase anything. You can enter your email, and you will get a thank you letter, and that thank you letter will convey two gifts from me to you. The first is a complimentary subscription to our newsletter, because there'll be rapid breaking news and you need to know what's happening. The second is that you will receive a copy or access to a copy of my protocol, my nanosilver protocol. I've been using nanosilver for 15 years. I think I know a little bit about it. And I want you to be protected against Ebola or any other infectious plague that comes at you. And to do that, you want to have a little bit of information. So that protocol is available to you when you sign up. You put your name and your email address in. Now, while you're there, you might very well want to make sure that you have enough nanosilver. A bottle contains 96 doses. Somebody wrote to me today and said, I'm taking 2 tablespoons 3 times a day. Is that okay? And I wrote back and I said, well, nanosilver is totally non-toxic, so you can't do yourself any harm, but why waste it? Why use so much?
Right.
You don't need
A standard serving.
one capsule.
Yes, that's a standard serving, 1 capsule. Exactly.
Yeah, so he was taking 6 times a standard serving several times a day. How silly. But it is incredibly effective and totally safe for every member of your family. If you care about other people, if you care about family, if you care about friends, if you care about coworkers, if you care about teachers or bosses or whatever, neighbors, other parents in the PTO, get them some. Why? They may say you're ridiculous. Oh, really? Please don't be so stupid. But when Ebola's on their doorstep, they will use the nanosilver, and they and you will not get sick. It's that powerful. That's one thing. The other is coffee. I was on Vinny's show a little bit earlier tonight, and we were talking about Ebola, and we were talking about silver, and we were talking about genocide, you know, the usual. And he said, before we start recording, I have to take some coffee. And he went like this. And then he said, that was obscenity delightful. And
actually, technically, I called it a religious denomination. I said that was the Shiite Muslim.
Yeah, almost. So, anyway.
That's literally what I said. Okay.
Anyway, that's not what I heard. But then again, the internet doesn't always comply. Anyhow, the point is that he was drinking coffee. Whatever coffee he's drinking is fine, and it made him sigh in delight and slurp in rapture. But it wasn't Valley of the Moon organic coffee. And you can have what Vinny Eastwood doesn't have. Unless, of course, he orders it or we decide to give him some. How would you get it? You would go to NSF Marketplace and you would click on the coffee tab at the top, and you would be taken to a site where you cannot buy Valley of the Moon coffee. We'll give it to you as a thank you for a donation. For each $25 donation you make, if you pay the shipping and handling, we will send you a half-pound bag of what I promise you is the best coffee you have ever had. It is completely free of added chemicals. It is grown in a pristine environment by people who love the land, because they understand that the land and they are working together to produce a magnificent coffee. And that coffee is our gift to you for every $25 donation. And it should be your gift to the other people in your life. It should be your corporate gift. It should be the gift to your coffee drinkers that you care about. Why do you want them to put pesticides and herbicides and fungicides and commit suicide in their with their coffee? You don't. So this is beyond pristine, certified organic by Via Latina, and an amazing and absolutely amazing coffee. And it's Health Freedom's own coffee. I don't know of any other Health Freedom organization that has a teaching farm where they grow something that you can have, which is this spectacular coffee. We'd love you to have it, and we'd love you to support us and our work by making a $25 coffee donation. So that's nsfmarketplace.com, and you can go to the coffee tab, and you'll be taken to the coffee page. Drink it, give it, enjoy it, treasure it, because it's food the way food is supposed to be. Now, back to truth, the way truth is supposed to be. Bold, audacious, and uncensored. I believe that would be you, Vinny.
Well, before we get back to Vinny, just a moment or two more. Vinny, before we get back to our discussion, there's one little thing, and that is Ebola. Just want to let people know that we have two tiny URLs they ought to take a look at. Those two tiny URLs are tinyurl.com, don't stop nano silver, and tinyurl.com, stop Ebola. The one page, Stop Ebola, gets you to the story of how we've been seeking to get silver into West Africa, nano silver. And the other link, Don't Stop Nano Silver, takes you to the Nano Silver Ice Bucket Challenge, the Stop Ebola Ice Bucket Challenge. And I think when you read what that's all about, you'll be very happy. So that's it, folks.
I'm glad you brought that up. There's so many things to talk about. Vinny, you have a large following. You are unique in New Zealand, and people look to you for information. So I'm going to ask you to take the Ice Bucket Challenge, which doesn't involve a drop of cold water. It involves ice cold reality, which is that Ebola is stopped by nano silver, and the genocidalists do not want anybody to know that. So we are asking every truth teller, and that would be you, Vinny, to send out the action item that we have, which is tinyurl.com, don't stop nano silver. tinyurl.com / don't stop nano silver. And we want everyone to flood the decision makers, the World Health Organization, the CDC, the FDA, the U.S. Health and Human Services Administration, so on, to flood them and demand that absolutely rigorous clinical trials of nano silver under international supervision be carried out, because they will work. These trials will stop Ebola, and this nightmare plague that can literally destroy society by destroying hundreds of millions of lives will literally go away. Now, are you willing to take that challenge and get your people to take this this action item, this electronic action, and then ask them to share it with everybody they can reach?
Well, that's not that difficult, because since my YouTube channel's gone, the only following I have is on Facebook, so sure, I'll post that.
This is so important. This is so important because, as I said in the earlier hour of this show, which was slightly truncated because we got our time zones confused, our fault. As I said, the globalists do not want this known, and they have been embargoing our silver, even though there's nothing illegal about silver, because the worst thing in the world that they can think of is for everybody to know how to stop Ebola. It's really quite simple if it's done with a nutrient. So I'm going to ask you, Vinny, to go to the tinyurl.com/don't stop nano silver and share it with everybody you know and encourage them to flood decision makers with millions of emails.
That's what we need to do, folks.
All right, so it's don't stop nanosilver and stop Ebola.
Well, they're just straight. Don't stop nanosilver. There's a link to the other page from that page. Don't stop nanosilver. It's one of those tinyurl.com / yes, indeed. And the big issue here is pushback and how we can make real change in the world.
We're also going to ask Save the Children Federation. You know, they are allegedly going to be putting together a 62-bed field hospital in Sierra Leone, which certainly needs it. And that 62-bed field hospital for children who have Ebola absolutely urgently needs what? It needs
nanosilver. It needs it as a surface decontaminant, and the U.S. government has already approved it as a surface decontaminant, even for the hemorrhagic viruses, and it needs it as a dietary supplement that supercharges the immune system.
Right. So we're going to say to them, okay, we're going to help you get the nanosilver. You want to stop the Ebola, right? And if they say no, then what are they really about? Are they another one of these do-gooder, really do bad, seeming do good but really do bad organizations like Doctors Without Borders? An organization.
I'm just thinking I'll start to rebrand myself. Like I'll try and tell everybody that I'm evil but do really good stuff.
Right, the opposites work. And that's exactly, for example, think of the Global Health Security Initiative, that wonderful public-private partnership that the UN is basically set up, run by two proteges of the Secretary General. It's an organization that actually has as its goal the stopping of pandemics by reducing human population. That is, the way to prevent a pandemic is to have less vectors and victims. So in order to stop people from dying in a pandemic, we need to make sure they're dead.
Yeah. See, this is all the public relations garbage that came out from the spawn of propaganda, Mr. Edward Bernays himself. You know, and it sickens me just what little knowledge the general public has about Bernays. They think it's some kind of condiment you have on a sandwich.
It's actually a sauce, isn't it?
Yes. Saucy Bernays. Very funny movie in which one of the characters is referred to. There's a Count Bernays, and one of the other characters refers to him as Saucy Bernays. But anyway.
Yes. So, yes, the public has very little awareness, but we have a special public. Not everybody listens to us. I mean, I know that may come as a shock to you, Vinny. I know you thought that the entire population of New Zealand and Australia listen to you every day, right? I know you thought that.
Could you imagine how much hate mail we would get on a daily basis if everybody actually listened to us? Like, it's good that we've got intelligent people who can understand, at the very least, the vocabulary and the concepts that we're trying to put across. And every now and again,
those aren't people who write the hate mail to us.
No. That's why I like them being the majority of the audience, even though that's a minority of humanity. They're the best. I've got this analogy. It's about panhandling, where you get dirt at the bottom of a stream into a pan, and then you just swill it around with the water, and eventually all the dirt comes off, and you're left with that beautiful gold at the bottom. And no matter how much of a pain in the ass it was to get rid of all that dirt in the first place, that gold's so valuable, man. And that's kind of how our audiences are in this vein of radio.
Well, that's very true. Our audiences think, and they care, and they question, and I love it when they write to me. I love it when they bring their concerns forward and they say, wait, this doesn't make sense to me. How does this work again? Or did you say so-and-so? That's not what I understood. and there's a challenge and a debate and a dialogue. That's wonderful, absolutely wonderful. Um, Occasionally it's a little strange, but mostly it's just wonderful. And when people are thinking, even if the conclusions they're coming to aren't the ones that you agree with, it's a wonderful thing. They are thinking and they are questioning and they are absolutely looking for a way to make sense out of a complex world. And that's what we're taught not to do in our daily lives and in our educational system. So it's great. How much mail do you get from people a day?
Not much actually. I mean, to be honest, I've tried to sort of force everybody into the Facebook realms, and it's like I don't know, 50 messages every 3 hours, I'd say.
Really? 15 messages every 3 hours, round the clock?
50.
Oh, 50. Wow. So do you have time to answer all of them?
Well, these are comments and things across a number of different platforms, and honestly, no, I don't really have time. I mean, I'll reply to things that I think are, well, if somebody sends me like a massive diatribe or something like that, and it's like 10 pages, like straight off the bat or something, and they haven't even said hello or how are you or anything even remotely polite or anything like that, and just proceed on this massive tirade ramble. Next, you know, I got my own life, bro. I got stuff to do. You know, if you got a specific question, you got something I can actually help you with, and you want to cut to the chase, please. That would be very, very nice. I don't need to know your life story.
You know, it's interesting. A lot of people do want us to know their life story. They really do. And it matters to them. And, you know, on the one hand, you want to reach out and be reached out to. And on the other hand, you hope that people understand that there is something besides their life story. And it's an interesting mixture.
Well, you know, the most important pieces of advice, two of them given to me by the same woman in the same moment. Don't take yourself too seriously, and don't take what other people have to say about you personally. You know, and
Yep.
you have to just kind of accept these as just the general facts of life. You know, you're not the be all and end all, even to yourself.
Correct. Correct. So, do you have? I find that I don't have time for my Facebook pages. People really want to interchange on Facebook, and I don't have time. I don't know where the time comes from.
Well, it's just there's too many modes of communication. I mean, how many conversations can you have at the same time without getting kind of confused and like messed up? Like, have you ever tried to hold two people having two different phone calls at the same time to your ears?
Phone calls
It's
I can't
impossible.
do. No, that's tough. But
It's impossible.
Skype chats. We keep multiple Skype chats going every day, right, Dr. Rima?
We sure do.
Yeah, that's how we organize the resistance.
You know? Exactly. But what I'm talking about is the compound effect, all right? So let's say it's impossible to have two audio conversations at the same time. Your brain just can't interpret that. Have we just figured out what the intensity level is of how long it would take you having two auditory conversations at the same time before you'd go a little bit nuts over it? And then can we do tests and double-blind studies to see how many different conversations, completely different conversations in text with completely different people on different topics simultaneously? How much of that do you have to do before it starts driving you a little bit nuts, before your brain can't handle that many signals coexisting? This is why Facebook drives people nuts. Is because they don't realize what the danger level is of having so many different forms of communication going at the same time.
I think that's very true. And
Yet
people indeed do not realize.
Yet multiple levels of communication can sometimes become very immersive. For example, all of the gamers, and I'm thinking my 25-year-old son, for example, will be running. And I've watched them do this. They'll be running a World of Warcraft where there are a dozen people coordinating their activities, and they're doing it by typing notes to each other that appear on the screen in the World of Warcraft and speaking to each other over something like Skype or a similar system. And so they have the game, they have the written notes, and they have their verbal discussion all at the same time. And that, of course, creates, I'm sure, a much more immersive experience for them.
I'm going to give you the contact details of who I consider to be the most profound medical researcher I've ever seen in all my years of having a look at people who do this kind of thing. His name's Dr. Sam Shea, and his understanding of the brain, how it works. He's a functional neurologist between men and women specifically, and the habits and all this eclectic health field knowledge. He's just a great interview, really, really impacting quite hard for me on the actual understanding of how our brain actually works. And one thing he clued me onto is that multitasking kills the brain. That it's actually a lot healthier for it if you set aside 45-minute blocks to do things. Women can do multitasking a lot better than men can, and it's because they have a much stronger corpus callosum, the connection between the two hemispheres of the brain. Whereas men, on the other hand, it literally starts to destroy the brain. It destroys its ability to focus. I'm not sure if the effect is permanent or just temporary and can be brought back. He also has a number of training skills and things of that nature. I've done the shoots for him for his training videos on how to actually train your brain, and these simple little do-it-yourself exercises at home to actually strengthen sides of your brain that are perhaps out of disjointed, so to speak. And it's his research to me is really compelling because of the times that we're living in and just how timely the information he's giving is.
Very interesting.
Oh, very interesting.
So men have to be focused on the kill because they're on the hunt, and women have to be broadly inclusive of the entire, hearth and homestead and everything that surrounds it and interacts with it. And so you've got
There are societies in which women hunt.
That's
there
true.
are societies in which there are more.
Very few. But, yeah.
Very few, but the brain is much
True.
the same.
That's true. That's true.
So I have some trouble with all that hearth and homey stuff.
I got it.
Well, he's right on only one or two levels, but Dr. Sam actually breaks down how the brain and that sense of the word works. So if you think about in general, it's not like an absolute one way or the other, because the brain's not split into such perfectly divided sections. There's a lot of crossover, and so it is with the brain's behaviors in men and women. But in general, this is how it works. This is the left male brain: testosterone, logic, action, details, facts, words, and language. Right? Does it suddenly become clearer why a lot of the talk radio show hosts and politicians and business leaders are male? Because you think about those elements of how their brain is actually wired, of what they're wired to function like. And then you think about the right side, the female brain: estrogen, feeling, thinking, big picture, imagination, symbols and images. Is it any wonder why women are the best designers? Why they're such great psychologists and psychiatrists? It's because their brain's hardwired to be particularly gifted at that far more than a man would be. And what this means is there's no men are better at this and women are better at that. Well, the thing is, we can train our brains to be good at both. But what's problematic is people are trying to think that there's a war between the sides of our brain as opposed to a relationship.
And that
Nicely
is indeed
said.
problematic.
Nicely said.
Yeah.
Nicely
And speaking
said.
of the word problematic, when I went into university, instead of using words like problems, they just used more complicated words that mean the exact same thing, like problematic. And I just realized the other day, I'll read through books or documents that activists have sent me that they've written themselves, and I see this very simple, clear language that outlines details and facts and gives you a clear picture very quickly. And then I recall back to my university days where it's convoluted language, extra syllables that don't need to be there, and repeating themselves over and over again. And it's almost like a child got a dictionary, ate it, and then threw it up on a page, kind of thing, just to try and look smart,
Well,
without getting across any information.
And that's what's rewarded, because if you were to write simple, clear things in the conventional educational system, you would be penalized, and you would learn very quickly either to be in a state of complete and permanent rebellion, which I can identify with, or to capitulate and do it their way and get the A. So, you know, it's very much like going to medical school and learning the special language and the secret handshakes, and nobody else understands what you're talking about, which guarantees that you have a job.
Myself and other activists, our favourite term for this kind of language rhymes with the word bankery.
Bankery.
It rhymes with bankery. But cannot be mentioned on air.
Oh.
Aha. Okay, I got it. Okay, took me a moment.
Well, it should take a moment, because if it's right away, then there's something wrong with them.
So.
Did I just say that?
Vinny, yes, you did. It was amusing.
It's being recorded.
So, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
How many people in your intimate circle have dropped away as you've become clearer and clearer and clearer about what's going on? How many people have backed off and said, "Ooh, I don't think I can handle this"?
From before becoming an activist to becoming an activist after quitting work and everything, 100%. Oh, wait. Actually, there's only one person who's stuck with me since I changed to who I am, and that's my mate Jono. Because he had a bit of a self-discovery and personal power. Like when he and I first met each other, he'd just gone through a really bad traumatic time in my life, in his life. And I'd just come back from getting busted and having my girlfriend leave me, and basically the worst traumatic time in my life. And we met randomly at a work party kind of thing, and we've just basically been best friends ever since. We're both the exact same height. We both have a lot of very great things in common. Other than that, everybody who I was ever friends with in university, high school, or any form of employment function throughout my entire life is no longer my friend or close associate. You know, I actually had to, it's like starting your Rolodex from scratch. But just like that panhandling analogy, I realized that I actually had a pan full of dirt, and now I've just chucked it all off to realize that I had nuggets all along.
And was that a difficult process for you personally?
You mean to lose everything you ever thought you understood about the world? No, it was easy, bro.
A lot of people who go through this process, one way or another, have a huge amount of angst and a sense of loss and despair, as if somehow they expected that when the scales fell from their eyes, they would maintain the same relationships and they would be rewarded and appreciated for making everybody completely uncomfortable.
Well, pain and suffering is necessary for growth. I mean, I'm 6'4". When I was a bit younger, when I was having my growth spurts, they were really, really painful. But now I'm bigger and stronger for it. And so too does the trauma we suffer through in our lives. Sometimes it damages you, but you can repair yourself if you really, really want to. The problem is you don't always want to. And sometimes you want to, but you have no idea how. And because your social circles are often very confined, like I'm a very outgoing person, so I can literally make best friends with somebody within a 20-minute conversation kind of thing. It's sort of how my show works, you know. I'm likable, I'm friendly, I'm talented, blah 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 blah. I've got a lot of things that people like. The difference is when I'm talking to somebody, I'm not trying to manipulate them into faking who I am in order to get them to like me. I'm just being myself, and they like me. This is very, very different. because I know who I am. A lot of people don't know who they are yet. They haven't challenged themselves. You have no idea what kind of courage you have unless you are tested. And fate really calls upon us at a moment of our choosing. I was tested, I was destroyed, I was built back up, and it happened to me at a much younger age than it happens to a lot of people. This was before I got completely educated into the system, before I entered into the work life. My veil started to get lifted, and I've accomplished so much in my 20s that I have literally accomplished more than any other single media figure in New Zealand's history, basically entirely by myself, because I was willing to let go of everything that I once valued before becoming awake to how things really are. But also at the same time, I was willing to do a lot of self-analysis over that period of time. Man, why did I yell at my sister and be so abusive to her because she told me that she wanted to live in her own cushioned bubble of ignorance? Why didn't I just, leave her to it? And then maybe somebody else would say something to her another day about the bleached white bread or whatever that she's eating while she's pregnant. You can't control people. You can't convince everybody of the truth, even if it's the truth, even if you've got evidence, even if it's absolutely blindly obvious, people are still capable of not recognizing it. I know why that is. A lot of people in our positions, they say, "Oh, I don't know why this is." But you know why it is, because you understand the system to a lesser or greater degree. That there's some form of mind control being implemented on absolutely everybody to make us not act naturally, to not be naturally open, to not be naturally caring.
Right.
And these are things that people don't want to know and hear because they've been separated from themselves by so many factors. Ralph, what about you? I know, because we're on the phone so often, I know that you have friends and you have social life and so on.
Yes.
Are these people who have been with you a very long time, or as you've grown, have you lost some of the people who were mainstays in your life because of it?
People come and go, but I think most of the mainstays in my life have remained stable for decades. And our circle of friends in the West End of the New York metro area include a lot of people who are involved in the healing arts and in advanced healing. So we have a lot in common on that level. Some old hands in the vitamin industry, some libertarians, and a few others. But we, also try to keep linked to younger people so that we can figure out what's really going on. And
well, you have a son who's
right
your
mid-20s
among your links
right
to the young world.
Mm-hmm. And so I feel linked into my social setting, but I feel quite alienated from the formal structure of this society. So that's and there's any aware person has to feel alienated from any society that they're living in, no matter which one it is. So these are all important issues, and this program tonight has really given us an opportunity to think about some of these really psychological issues, and it's the lighter side of genocide, as Vinny has said in the past, because we're sort of trading gallows humor a little bit. But on the other hand, if we're not here doing this, nobody is doing it, and so it's good for us to be here, and it's good for us to consider where humanity is and where we're going. We have to acknowledge that the elite have some plans for us, and those plans are not being discussed with us. They're not being subject to any democratic process. And the people who are implementing them don't seem to have any respect for limits on the exercise of power. So we're in a precarious situation. I point out, of course, that for the past 2,100 years, there has been a serious, devastating plague that has ravaged Eurasia and Africa, presumably, about every 700 years. The last major one, of course, was 1346, I believe, and 700 years before that was the plague of Justinian, and 700 years before that was another major plague that ran through Eurasia. Of course, it's been a bit over 700 years, and it looks as though the plague is setting up. And so I asked Dr. Rima earlier in the year, are we living through a year of the plague? And that's perhaps a subject for gallows humor as well, but it's something we need to face and deal with. Just
Well,
like we have to face the pathology of the leaders of various countries, as we discussed earlier in the program.
I don't believe that there's any doubt that we are living in the year of the plague. What the doubt has been was which plague it was going to be. Was it going to be the swine flu? Was it going to be the avian flu? Was it going to be some chicken flu? What flu could they get to be the plague? Was it a re-engineered flu with the pandemic death genes of the 1918 plague? Which plague was finally going to work? Oh my goodness, we've spent so much time and so much money and so much effort, and so many scientific laboratories have been equipped, and we're funding so many journals publishing our playbook. And finally, I've always said, pity the poor depopulationists. They work so hard, and most of their efforts come to naught. Well, Ebola appears to be coming to much, except there's a silver lining. And my, how they don't want that silver lining out there. Ooh, are they not happy? Because it's so simple. I'm sure, can't you just see in the halls of pathogenic power, can't you just hear them saying, well, listen, boss, this is a really good plague, and it's got a kill rate of about 90%, and that's really cool, but there's this thing that could inactivate and cure it, make it go away. It's really simple, and it's legal in the United States, and it's nano silver. And somebody's saying, my lad, you worry too much. We finally came up with a perfect plague. This one kills. It's very highly communicable. It's very difficult to stop. None of the antibiotics work. We'll tell people to plunge their hands into buckets of chlorine. That'll make them think like they're doing something. And we'll tell them it's not communicable by droplets when it really is. And they won't notice. But, in 2009, some idiot declassified the Department of Defense research that proves conclusively that nanosilver actually does inactivate it. And I'm sure that whoever declassified it would not get promoted at this point if they were up for promotion. Not at all. So this little happenstance, this little quirk of declassification numbers has given us the ultimate weapon against this particular ultimate plague. It's not foolproof. It's not the ultimate weapon against whatever it is that they come up with next, and they're certainly spraying us with chemtrails and, contaminating us to beat the band. But in terms of this particular plague, it's nanosilver to the rescue, and I'm sure they're not happy that they overlooked this little piece of data.
Indeed. Interestingly enough, the charge that this is a weaponized pandemic, of course, has evidence behind it. The last time there was a major plague, 1346, it may have also been, in a sense, an engineered pandemic. It got started during the, I believe it was Mongol siege of one of the Crimean ports. Back to the Crimea, right?
Right.
And the siege was going on, and the Mongols had the bubonic plague was ravaging their camp, and they used their catapults to dump bodies into the city, dead bodies, people who died of the plague. And apparently there were enough fleas on those bodies that started the plague in the city, and a group of Italian merchants stuck in the city bribed their way out by paying the Mongols in gold, and took their ships and fled to Genoa. And it was from Genoa that the plague started that ravaged Europe, although it had already been working through its way through Asia. So in a sense, the weaponized pandemic is not a new thing. Not
in the least. Yeah. Not in the least new. And people have been poisoning other people's wells, and let's not forget that a few hundred years after that, the grateful pilgrims used smallpox-infested blankets to get rid of the Indians.
About a 90% kill rate. About a 90% kill. That's the other thing to note, and that is that Ebola may have up to a 90% kill rate, although in Liberia apparently it's been 55%. And yet the Great Plague that ravaged Europe seems to have only had a 1/3 kill rate back in the 1340s.
Have you guys interviewed Douglas Dietrich on any of this? Because he was he used to be a Department of Defense librarian, and he was talking to me about the weaponization of viruses even back in World War One kind of thing, where they had trainloads full of soldiers being shipped around, but they had lots of chickens on board them specifically, and the soldiers were getting really, really sick. And that was like the first kind of version of weaponized
live flu vaccine. They were given the live flu vaccine. And then after they and their chickens were shipped over to Europe, they were put through military exercises that included exposing them to mustard gas. Think of all the toxic intermixing that was. I mean, if one were doing a witch's brew.
Well, see, this is the thing. People forget that history repeats itself, and as Mark Twain said, if it doesn't repeat itself, it sure does rhyme.
Well, Marx said, of course, history repeats itself first as tragedy and then as farce.
Yeah, and quite frankly, it's pretty farcical nowadays. It's just out of control.
Dr. Rima, you wanted to say something along the way there. Sorry.
I did. Actually, the soldiers who spread what was called the Spanish flu were inoculated with an experimental flu paid for by John D. Rockefeller Jr. In Kansas, in the state of Kansas, and they were then shipped to New York City, and they were then shipped to Europe to spread the flu, as you said, Vinny. But they were shipped in troop ships where they had terrible conditions. Most of them were terribly ill by the time they reached the European shore, and then they were exposed to poison gas.
Right, exactly.
And that acted as a laboratory to change the virus in their bodies, their weakened bodies. Their immune systems were depleted, and the virus had been injected, apparently on the suggestion of Teddy Roosevelt. Walk softly and carry a big syringe. Teddy Roosevelt wanted to weaponize the soldiers to spread the new disease to Europe in order to weaken the European powers.
Definitely biological warfare. No question about that.
Absolutely. Now, the 50 million people who died, most of them had taken, I don't know whether our listeners know this, most of them had taken the new wonder drug, which was salicylic acid, we know it as aspirin, that is made from celery or synthesized from coal tar, but it's a compound that inhibits fever. And so people were able to go to work even when they had the flu and the aches, and they didn't have the fever, so they'd go to work or take care of their children or do whatever they would drive.
Hang out on the battlefield. Hang out on the battlefield.
And then 2 weeks later, the immune system would suddenly be overwhelmed by what we now know was a cytokine storm, caused by the massive replication of all the viruses that they hadn't had a fever to burn out of their systems. And so by suppressing the fever, these healthy young people who were able to work or hang out on the battlefield or whatever were put into a position where they could be overwhelmed and then drown in their own fluids as their lungs filled with secretions, and that's how they died. So that seemed to the genocidalists of our own time like a great idea. So when they were able to dig up an Eskimo woman who had died of the flu and take
in 1918, in 1918, right?
Exactly.
That flu.
Sections of her lung, they took it back to New York City to Dr. Jeffrey Taubenberger, who spent 6 years isolating the really, 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 really good parts, the deadly parts, the 4 gene sequence that caused the death of 50 million people. And then he spliced that into the avian flu. Can you imagine how excited he was when he was able to create disease? And can you imagine how very disappointed he was when it was realized that this wonderful H5N1 miracle flu was unable to kill lots of people because it replicates in your nose, and the temperature of your nose is colder than the temperature of your body. So it didn't really do anything, and it was a fizzle. 6 years of work, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, poor genocidalist.
6 years of genetic
and he doesn't even qualify. He doesn't even qualify for the Mengele Award.
No, he didn't kill anybody.
Well, there must have been a few people who died of heart attacks during the swine flu panic.
Well, maybe, but he didn't. He really didn't kill. This was the avian flu, the H1N1.
Oh, this was. I'm sorry.
Yeah. He didn't really get. I bet he didn't even get invited to the Bilderberger meeting.
Oh, this is really sad. But of course, they learned their lessons, and a couple of years ago, somebody donated money to Sierra Leone to set up an infectious disease laboratory. A good thing to do, one would think.
I know who the somebodies are.
Well, I was going to let you tell us that.
The World Health Organization, and the United States, and the United Nations, and Bill Gates and George Soros. They set up level 2 biosecurity laboratory inside Kanima Hospital in Freetown, Sierra Leone. And then, since they had a level 2 hospital, a level 2 security lab, they decided to break the rules a little bit. You're not allowed to play with level 4 hemorrhagic viruses unless you have a level 4 lab. But they said, hey, maybe nobody's looking. And so they played with the Ebola virus. Maybe they were weaponizing it.
Isn't that supposed to be in a separate building if it's a level 4? I mean, you don't put that in a hospital, do you?
Well, it depends what your intention is.
Ah, okay. Because I remember that during the swine flu panic, somehow, Lord knows how, where they were producing some of the swine flu vaccine on this wonderful corporate campus somewhere in, was it the United States? Somehow a live avian flu virus got from one building across several acres, one level 3 building, I believe it was, across several acres over to the factory, which was a level 3 facility, and somehow got into the vaccine. So if that particular batch of vaccine, which was heading for Europe, if it had been used, it would have literally cooked up and spread an avian flu.
Well, it did reach Europe. Right. What happened was that an alert laboratory technician was testing it on ferrets, because ferrets respond to viruses much like people do. And all of the ferrets who had been inoculated with the vaccine died. And none of the ferrets were supposed to die. And he said, woo, wah, wah, and he did an investigation, and he discovered that the vaccines from Baxter in the United States had live avian flu virus.
Was it the same avian flu virus that was cooked up by the good doctor, or a different one?
I am not sure. Probably similar. But here's the cool thing: Baxter had the contract, the exclusive contract with 19 European countries, that if an avian flu pandemic broke out, they would make all the avian flu vaccine and they would sell all the avian
Oh,
flu
market
shots.
development.
Yes!
What do you think,
Yes!
Vinny? Was that good market development strategy? Do we have Vinny with us still? Oh my
Vinny, are
gosh.
you there?
Yeah,
Oh, good.
I'm still here.
All right. Is
What do
it?
you think?
Yeah, I honestly don't know. I
Okay.
don't have an opinion on this.
Well, they actually were censured by the World Health Organization that said, you shouldn't do that. And they said, oh, okay, we won't do it again. So they admitted that they had done it.
Wow. All right.
Yeah.
Well, that's where we are, folks. We've
they-
got about 5 minutes left before the end of the program.
Okay,
Maybe we should,
and we've
you know,
got
some.
Vinny.
Yeah.
We've got Vinny. Okay, Vinny, tell us where the action is. What do you want to say to our listeners in the last 5 minutes?
You know, I'm kind of at a loss for words. Nah, I'm kidding.
How many radio programs have you done today? You did one with Dr. Rima. I think you did another one that you mentioned. And is this the third?
No. I've just done like 4 shows in the last 2 days, I think.
Oh, okay.
It's no big problem. Plus, you know, protesting and whatnot. So I don't know entirely what to say, because when it comes to me, I'm just sort of like I bumble around and just sort of fly by the seat of my pants the majority of my life, and you know it's still no different. I figure if something's really, really dark and if something's really nasty and if it scares you, then one of the healthiest things to do is make a joke about it.
Mm-hmm.
You know? I mean,
Right.
if something makes you really, really angry, if something really upsets you or concerns you massively, then make a joke about it, okay? And this will actually help to balance out the things. And people get offended when you make jokes about things that are really, really serious, you know? Like jokes about pedophilia or racism or the Gaza-Palestine conflict or things of that nature. Do you think any of the people that are involved in those issues or conflicts have got a sense of humor about it?
No.
No? Well, guess why they're in frickin' conflict then?
Very good.
You know,
Hello?
I think...
Did I miss something?
Right.
See, that's the only reason why people go to war, as they lose their sense of humor about it. Vinny, you're a stupid fat bastard. Oh, really? That's classic. As opposed to, I kill you.
And on that wonderful note, we come to the end of another Dr. Rima Truth Reports. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being with us, Vinny. Give your website quickly.
The VinnyEastwoodShow.com. That's Vinny with a Y, because it's the most important question, and Eastwood doesn't go ahead. Make my news.
Thank you, Vinny. Thank you so much.
Back next week, folks.